Okay, welcome back, everyone, to Things That Bug Me. This is episode 6, I believe, now. And with me today is my friend Jay. Both she and her husband Mike are good friends of mine. They live in Ireland. And Jay is I'll hand over to her in just a minute to introduce herself maybe a little bit more and tell us about the thing that bugs her. So, Jay, thank you very much for making the time to come and do this. And the floor is yours. Please go ahead. Tell us what bugs you and why it bugs you.
Okay. Well, um, the thing that I'm choosing to focus on that bugs me at the moment is electric cars. Not specifically the electric car, but just how it was marketed and the lies we were told, the bad management and built-in obsolescence, to name but a few. Um, so, you know, there was a drive to go electric in the last 10 years. It was marketed as, being environmentally friendly, the way to go, the way of the future. And for me, you know, who who obviously wants to do my best for the earth. I bought I bought the marketing basically. I'm like the fact that we can generate electricity and and then create our own fuel was was a plus for me. So that was good. Now when we
Sorry to interrupt you, but when you say you were taken in by that, does that mean you bought an electric car? You actually bought one?
Yes. So I was about to go in on that. When we bought our electric car in 2020, yeah, that would have been just at the beginning of the lockdown, it was free to charge them. So basically, we bought a car where we could charge it at home and it was free to charge them on the motorways. You didn't have to pay, and that was the way. So which was, when you're doing short distances, it's great because we can actually charge it at home at a cheap rate. But long distances, it was always going to be a bit more of a challenge. But, you know, weighing it up, the extra time versus doing good for the environment felt like a really good idea. However, within a year, the prices all of a sudden they started to charge on the roads. And it is now at the point where it is as expensive for me to charge up as it is if I were using diesel or petrol. So there is no economic benefit. However, there is there is the extra time. So whereas if I was driving a diesel car, it would take me 2.5 hours to go to Dublin. It takes me approximately 5 hours to go to Dublin. Now, again, like
Oh, what? Because you
initially,
can't do it in one trip. You have to stop part way and charge up. Right. Okay.
so,
Okay.
so basically, these cars are relatively expensive. So this car was not. I mean, there was a grant. I think it was 38,000 at the time. We ended up paying 35,000. Um, but it was the smaller of the cars. So, like the battery in our car will only do 260 kilometers. Now, that's on a nice day, but like in the winter and if it's raining, you don't have that sort of range. And there is, like, you quickly learn the thing about anxiety range, uh, which, which is because, right, there isn't an infrastructure. Like there isn't an infrastructure for the cars. So if you have, spent money on a much bigger car, you would be able, if you have a battery of 500k, you would be able to get across the country. But when you don't, you can't. Now, the infrastructure actually isn't there to charge up. So there are like there so there are like a couple of points where you can stop. And as is happening now, as more cars go on the road, very often you have to wait for your spot. So
Charging point.
therefore,
Yeah, I was just about to ask about that. Yeah, okay.
yeah. So therefore you're not, therefore you're not, yeah. Now you can get an app and it will tell you if there's somebody's charging there, but the reality of it is that if you're not, if if you're on the motorway, you actually have to stop at a certain point or you'll end up with range anxiety. And I spoke to people, in the queues at different times. I've never really had to wait more than an hour. Um, but like I've spoke to somebody who was saying his father had the same car in the UK, and this, and he had showed him 10 cars queuing up for the spot. So that's not really good, obviously. So, and what has happened in recent times is at the garages where they used to have the governmental, like Electric Ireland chargers there. At one of the stops that I go, they've taken that away, and like the garage has put in this private company. So like I had like, oh mother, like I was going to collect somebody from the airport there a couple of weeks ago. And when I went to charge up at this new one, and of course then you have to download the app so that you can, so it's more apps. But basically, it wouldn't let me unplug it. So, after I went into the garage and nobody in the, like three different people out, and none of them could figure it. And there was a number on these on these charging things. So like I rang the person on a Saturday afternoon, and it was like some woman who was, in an office, and she was of absolutely no assistance to me whatsoever. She was asking me for my email address. And I'm like, I'm at a charge point here. I can't get away. I'm going to pick my daughter up from the airport. And she's like, hold on, and then, I put the phone down, and then like I go and I ring back 10 minutes later because I'd given her my number as well. She wasn't getting back. And I mean, she really was away with blooming fairies. Like I had to put her on to the person, like the employee, because she was just not making, and he was getting irate for me because the people in the garage hadn't got a blooming clue. Like it was on a motorway. Um, and oh my goodness, like eventually, and this was an hour later, so I was held up an hour there, and that really bugged me because I could tell that they didn't actually have a maintenance team. Like there was nobody. She didn't even know where I was at Enfield. It's like it's on the like so. But it turned out that the button had got jammed, and I managed to stick my nail down and it popped up. But like other people because there was two charging ports, like other people had came and went and we hadn't figured it out. So that's really frustrating actually. There's not enough chargers, and then they're and that the government are pulling out now. So 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 basically we were sold on false pretense. First, it was supposed to be like free energy on the roads. Then, what the government did in and around 2020 in Ireland was they they obviously thought it was good for the environment. And I will go into the next point, which is probably important. It turns out, which I didn't know, but like the batteries use cobalt and lithium, and they actually mining them is also like a huge source of, environmental destruction. It's like it's not
Yeah.
good. It uses a huge amount of energy,
Not to
and
mention labor exploitation practices, but yeah, yeah,
that,
absolutely.
that's actually not like that. That actually is kind of like that actually was and that almost bugs me about me, that I was blind to that I didn't know that I didn't research that well enough. I mean, the lockdown was a bit of a mad time, but basically the government in Ireland subsidized taxi drivers. So there's 10,000, so to buy electric cars. So 10,000, like, so so a huge amount of taxi drivers bought EVs. So when I go to Dublin and I'm staying in Dublin and I don't have somewhere like a port in the house that I'm staying in, I've got to go to to the garages, like to charge up. There's not a huge amount of them. The amount of times that I've went along and taxi drivers are sitting there and I've had to go off and come back and go off and come back um, is ridiculous. So basically, they don't have, so they've got um, all these taxi drivers driving these cars who are, pulling in, taking their break at the charging point, which means that if you don't, like if you're there visiting and you have a car, you could be waiting a long time or having to drive off and come back, which I to do a lot. There was a point where my aunt lived in Dublin and I go and visit her, and that was quite frequent. Um, and yeah, I've even actually one particular taxi driver, I've met him quite a few times. And there was one time where I'm sitting there, I'm waiting, right? And because there's somebody else with the charger, somebody, somebody calls me, I'm on my phone. The same fucking taxi driver came up and he charged ahead of me. I was sitting there and I'm like, I came up, I was like, and he sat there and then he tells me, well, you can go around to Sundrive and like, anyways, like that was a really sorry, that was just a real, and I've met him. So basically that like that's really annoying that that the cars were marketed, but the infrastructure actually
Mhm.
isn't there to support them. And that,
Okay, so can I pause you there just for a minute, just to
yeah.
summarize what I've heard so far? So first of all, well, basically sold the cars under false pretenses is your gripe, as far as I understand it. Yeah, and then the false pretenses breaks down into a couple of things. Number one, you were told that you were going to be able to charge up for free on the roads, and bit by bit they started to charge more and more. It's like a drug dealer, isn't it? Like, oh, your first hit's free. Yeah, your first hit's for free. And yeah, the subsidizing of taxi drivers in order to get electric taxis on the road, and again not expanding the infrastructure to accommodate that. I've got a very good friend who is a taxi driver in London, and in London you are not allowed to be a taxi driver in anything other than an electric cab. Like all new cabs had to be electric from, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, something like that. And so it's being forced on taxi drivers in London to switch over to electric. Yeah, there's a lot that's gone on around electric cars. They've sort of been forced down our throats on the premise that they are environmentally friendly. And as you pointed out already, they are not environmentally friendly, not in the round. Yeah, sure, they pump less pollution into the air on the roads where they're driving around. Yeah, sure, that absolutely is true. But you zoom out a little bit and you look at environmental impact on in a broader context and actually over the lifetime of the vehicle, and then you've got to think about how do you dispose of all of those materials once the batteries are no longer useful, right? What's the disposal process? What's the fallout from the disposing of all of this? The environmental impact over the lifetime of the vehicle, as I understand it, is significantly greater than a petrol or a diesel car.
It was kind of a bit shocking for me because when I was looking into it, like they're saying that the battery life is only 10 years. So so you have this built-in obsolescence in it. Like it's not
Mhm.
which is just absolutely ridiculous.
And sorry, can you replace the batteries, or do you have to buy a whole new car at that 10-year period? And if you can replace the batteries, roughly what is the cost of doing that?
No,
Do you know?
like no, 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 like the battery, like right. So, right. Like our car was when I was, so we have a Nissan Leaf again. I mean, it's like a low budget kind of family EV. I just saw there when I was looking up this that they've discontinued it because they're after bringing in uh like a new model online now. Basically, it turns out this car is 4 years old. It turns out that like the charge that I use, like the the connection is called it's the CH. That's just the name of it, right? But they are already the old connection.
Right.
So, for example, now, like, this is when it gets really dodgy. Like, I was driving down to West Cork, and you can kind of get it, like, so it's 140k. I have to plan the journey. So this is part of it because there isn't enough infrastructure at all and charge. You have to plan the journey. So there is a charge point at the ferry. It's a little kind of car ferry. So like down I go. It doesn't it doesn't have a connection for mine. Right? And then and I mean that journey was unreal because actually I was so lucky. There was no like West Cork is wild, beautiful, amazing Kerry. There was no there was one charger and it just like and it was a slow charger. So and like there was one in Tralee, so you kind of have to go off the route. But it just so happened, thanks be to goodness, that the town I was staying in, Glengarriff, actually had a slow charger there, right? But it 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 was where I was staying, so I could leave it, for 5 hours is what I had to do. But basically, like I was fucked, like for want of a better word, like like you
Mm.
couldn't. So therefore, and that was the first time I came up against that when I was talking to the guy in the garage, and I was telling him, what happened with the charger, that they didn't have the connection. He's going, oh, they brought out an adapter which you can get for your
Hmm.
part. And I'm like, how much is it? €1,000.
Oh, oh.
Like, do you know what the fuck? Um, so yeah, so I think really there needs to, there really like it annoys me that they created something to be a solution, but it really wasn't a solution, that they pushed it and they haven't done the infrastructure at all.
Mm.
So yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
haven't given a balanced picture of A, the reality of owning one, and B, the reality of the supposed environmental benefits of it. We only get one side of that story, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff which gets left out. And so which actually leads me to my next question for you, which is, to what degree are you annoyed by the government and the marketing departments of the electric vehicles and so on for misrepresenting the benefits of owning an electric car to you, and so you ended up buying one? And to what degree are you annoyed with yourself for being taken in by that marketing and promotion and strong arming?
Yeah, yeah, that the government has marketed a product and not created the backup for it is really annoys me. And that it is already becoming monopoly, like, that then like the national energy grid is you know being removed, and the garages are now monopolizing them. That really annoys me. It annoys me that what annoys me is that child labor may have been that the mining of these materials is not a clever or good way to go, and actually it's not really a great idea. That really, really bothers me. That I didn't see that, because I wouldn't, like, for me, the advantage of having an electric car was where we live is 20k away from the sea, and I swim, and I knew for the I'm always going to be driving, and you know that we can create our own, the thought behind it was we can create our energy, and I'm not so I'm not yeah, I'm not just a consumer. It was the effort,
So you have
the
you
aim.
have solar panels at home, yeah? So you'd be producing your own power to charge the car with, hence no Purchase it. Yeah, okay, I understand. Yeah, makes perfect sense.
So,
Makes perfect sense.
from that, I mean, and I can, there was some sort of a security where I wanted to be a generator as opposed to a consumer. But like, what has happened, I mean, what's happened with these cars is so the battery gets less efficient as time goes on. So like this car won't be doing long distances soon. Because you'll have to charge up more and more
Hmm. Hmm.
along the way. Too many stops. So yeah, like it's like they're not the answer, that's for sure. And like, when I spoke to people who are having the really big queues in the UK, we're not at that here. But like, um, the fact that there are queues and that they haven't got the infrastructure there, and the fact that the new infrastructure coming in isn't going to be even have chargers for this car, which is only 4 years old. um, it just doesn't really compute. I mean,
Mm.
and I think that's what just bugs me is that we're coming up with solutions that aren't real solutions. Um, and yeah, huh, yeah, that that marketing a product as being environmentally friendly when the mining may, I mean, aside from the environmental damage, may be extremely unethical. Is just actually really, really deeply upsetting for me. That really bugs
Mm.
me.
Yeah.
That really
Yeah.
bugs me.
I have to say, me too. The thing that bugs me personally most around the whole electric car thing is the virtue signaling that goes on with people that own electric cars, right? And the sort of sanctimonious, oh, you're still driving a petrol car, this kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, you just, well, you said before about not real solutions. They're not actual solutions. They're not actually solving the problem, right? The window dressing. It looks like it's solving the problem, right? But it actually isn't. That's a huge issue. This is one facet of that, and this is maybe in future episodes of things that bug me. We can get more into that giant problem, right? Of pretending to solve a problem but not actually solving a problem, either kicking the can down the road, transferring the problem somewhere else, or not even addressing the problem at all, but just, as I say, window dressing. And I think electric cars falls into that category. If
Mm.
you're charging, whether it's free or not, whether the infrastructure exists or not, doesn't really matter. That energy still has to be, that electricity still has to be generated. How is that electricity generated? Primarily by burning petrol and diesel, right? It's still, that's still primarily how it's generated.
I think that's what really, but like that, that lie. Can you imagine? I bought a vehicle where it was fucking free to travel across country, and now I am spending as much. Like it costs as much to as anybody else, except that I've all that extra time and they haven't put the infrastructure in.
Mm-hmm.
So they put that. I mean, and like I think Mike was saying to me um that the guy in the garage was telling him now that one garage is like that they're not doing trade-ins. Like basically, a lot of people are, the people are not going to go for it now because the infrastructure isn't there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, so yeah, so just that short-sightedness.
Yeah. Rental car fleets are getting rid of all their electric cars. They can't rent them. No one's interested in renting electric cars.
Well, I mean, on that, like I had friends from the US come over and they rented out they rented out an electric car. It was the only one they could get when they would turn around. I think it was Portugal's, but basically they ended up having to check in. Like they had range angst, they'd ran out, they couldn't find, and they ended up having to spend a fucking fortune checking into a hotel because it was the only place with a charger and they wouldn't let them charge unless they checked in. So, um, like it's just kind of bonkers. Like
Mm.
and yeah. I've learned it's kind of like because I did the range angst, and this is the thing, right? It makes me drive. So it would probably. I don't mind driving on the motorway at 100k, but like if Mike has the foot down and he's the faster you go, the quicker it burns up
Of course.
energy.
Yeah.
So so the more you have to stop. So I kind of have to do, I will drive slower because it's less, it's less of a charge. Now, I mean, like I have learned to enjoy stopping, and factoring that in some ways, it became, but if you're in a rush, like,
Mm.
yeah, as I said, no, I mean, I kind of feel like they were marketed on false pretenses actually, and and then they didn't put the infrastructure there, and now they're blooming while changing the infrastructure, changing the infrastructure. So yeah. But as long as we can generate, and I can do my short little spins, I won't be doing long distance. I can see in the future. Yeah, I just won't be driving. I mean, after that last journey cross country, when I got fucking stuck and thought I couldn't, nobody to help me, like nobody to come, nobody in the garage even knowing about it.
Mm.
Like, yeah, that was just a bit. That was just a bit bugging.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I suspect businesses will start to spring up if more. But the thing is, it's kind of a difficult one, right? Because as a user, all the benefits that you were told that you were going to have as an electric car owner, actually, every single one of those benefits was a lie. Yeah, it's not more convenient. It's not cleaner. It's not. It adds time to your journey. It's not cheaper because they're charging you for the electricity. It's not more convenient because they change the charging points to a thing, and now you have to spend €1,000 on an adapter so that you can charge, so that you can use that particular type of charging point. So every single supposed benefit turned out to be bullshit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is it fun to drive? Is it at least fun to drive? Is it enjoyable to drive?
Oh yeah, like yeah, for sure. Yeah, like I'm a good driver now. I can, yeah, like I can reverse, and like I mean it is fun to drive. I mean I do, as you said, like, and I do love it, and for as long as we can generate electricity, I love the fact. I mean, and I think, like I love the fact that I'm self-sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
But that children are involved in the mining of some of those I that I can't
But the same applies to the batteries in your solar system and my solar system for that matter, right? I mean, they also contain lithium and cobalt. And so, we are just as culpable as solar system owners as we are as electric car owners in that respect.
yeah, so that's it, Eric. Um yeah, yeah. I don't like being lied to. But
No,
then
fair enough.
again,
Fair enough.
that's it, that's it. That's, I think that's kind of that's the bigger picture. It's kind of like that's what bugs me is that people will lie to sell you something, and then
No one likes being deceived. No one likes being deceived. At least you realized it, you know what I mean? At least you're not in denial about it. At least, oh shit, made a mistake there and whatever. But it sounds, for in your situation with solar panels, it sounds as though local journeys, running the kids to school, doing the shopping, that kind of thing is actually sweet, right? It does cost you nothing at all to fuel your car.
Eric, we've had so much rain and grey sky that it's
Oh, the
like
solar hasn't been. I see what you mean.
no. Like, we can
Yeah,
charge it at night
yeah,
at a lower rate. It's cheaper, but like, we
yeah,
need the
yeah.
sunshine.
No, I hear you.
Yeah,
I hear you.
yeah.
My winters are
Uh,
like that. I have to run the generator at night sometimes in order to keep the lights on during the winter. So last
oh,
last little part of this, Jay, and you've actually done a couple of little bits of this already in the last bit you were talking about is, what positives can we find in this? And even like ideally, is there some sort of little alchemy, little transformation that could be performed that could actually turn this into something? And so just to remind you of a couple of things that you said, that have learned to enjoy waiting, right? Like you've changed the way that you drive, you've slowed down, you've become less
Mhm,
impatient
mhm,
with it.
mhm.
And so that strikes me as having found something positive in the mess there. Um,
Yeah, it's definitely slowed my life down. It's definitely caused me to practice patience, caused me to have some good conversations along
mhm.
the way. As I said, like, that whole bit, the fact that I feel like as long as, as long as the grids up, I mean, there's like there's with the solar panels, they're connected with the grid. So if anything happens with the grid, we don't have we can't access the electricity. That's just how the thing is set up at the moment. But yeah, I mean, it means there's no doubt about it that the amount of driving I do to places and pickups and all the rest of it I feel much better in myself than if I was, because basically before I lived here, I lived on an island, and everything was, I didn't have to do drives. We do much, it's 15 minutes, 20 minutes to the town to do the shop all the time. So the fact that I'm not using diesel, petrol, and that it like it does, I do feel better, and it is more economical. Um, and it is a cool, nifty wee car. She's blue and she's a leaf, and I'm sure people are happy that I reverse good and all the rest of it. So she is really, really easy to drive. I do like that. And yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. I feel blessed that I was able to experience the new technology. But I certainly don't see it as, it's not gonna be, it's not the say, it's not the savior. It's not the solution to our
No,
motor.
I completely agree, and we've chucked a whole bunch of resources at it, which we're never going to get back again. I mean, you mentioned it already, but the amount of government subsidy which has gone into promoting electric cars, giving tax breaks to electric car manufacturers, this kind of thing. There's been a huge amount of public money, whether you like electric cars or not, right? Your money has been spent on promoting electric cars, and getting people to buy them, and yeah, there's definitely been a betrayal involved as well in the promise of free charging stations on the motorway, free ample charging stations on the motorways, only to be, high charging, not
You think about it, like,
possible.
what you think about it. And then they did this thing, like, for fuck's sake, like, because I'm not in the city, it was kind of like, so it takes for 40 minutes to charge up. So like, um, to get it up to 80%, if you're down at 10, 20%, it takes 40 minutes, right? So that was grand. Um, and I'd had one of those times where I went to two garages and there was taxi men. So anyhow, I went to Sundrive, and it's a shopping centre. So I put the car on, and I wanted it to get up to 90, because before you go on the motorway, you need a good charge. Yeah, it's just, I have my way of doing it now. I've learned that. Back, I hadn't read the email that came in, so they put it was 45 minutes charging. I didn't realize that you can only charge now for 40 minutes. And then I got I think it was a €10 fine or something, because I'd went 5 minutes over my allotted time. So, it's just like, for fact's sake, like, um, yeah, 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 yeah. Anyways. So, I mean, and they have to do that. They have to put a fine, because there's queues and people could stay
Yeah,
too long.
yeah.
But in that case, there wasn't anybody there, and anyways. So yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's a bridging technology for sure. And she's a beautiful electric blue.
Yeah, there's two things that need to happen in order to make electric cars viable. Number one, battery technology needs to change so that we do not rely on these relatively rare earth metals that are, even without the child labor and so on, right? But the child labor is what makes these cars affordable. If it wasn't for that, instead of paying 35,000, we'd be paying 60,000 for the same car. You know, it's the this is why these labor practices are employed, so that we don't have to pay as much for the car. But that's one thing. Battery technology needs to change. It needs to be different kinds of materials that can be easily recycled or that don't require mining, polymers, whatever. And the other thing is the generation of the electricity. I mean, it actually has to come from sustainable sources, not this ridiculous wind turbine nonsense, right? Which is even worse than the electric car thing. Again, by the time you've mined the metals and put the thing up and dug the concrete pylons and all of this kind of stuff over the lifetime of the thing, you're losing. So, you know, all of these so-called solutions are actually nonsense. Until we can figure out a way to generate electricity actually sustainably without burning stuff in order to do it, and can store that electricity without it requiring the use of highly toxic and difficult to get at substances, they're just not viable. As simple as that. They're not viable.
Not only that, I mean, I think I saw when I was just looking into the lease thing last night, like in European ports, there's like tens of thousands of Chinese electric cars that have been stockpiling there for
Nobody
18
wants
months.
them. Yeah.
Like there's nobody, and it's like so anyways. I mean, I think, yeah. I mean, I
It's
think
kind of
as I
hard to
said,
find a positive in all this. I do like to try and end each of these things with, you know, what would be a good version of this, right? What would a good version of this look like? But it's actually really hard to. This may be an impossible one to alchemize. It is just, yeah, it's wrong in every direction. All of it is just bullshit.
yeah.
Sad to say.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, shall we call it there? Unless there's anything you want to add, we can call it there.
No, no. It's well, I mean, I suppose it was good to be able to share the lesson. Anyhow, that is a positive,
Yeah. Thank
and
you.
you're welcome.
No, sorry. What were you going to say? You were going to say something else. Go
Oh
ahead.
no. It's like like my experience of range angst with
Mm.
with Mike when he doesn't do the long journeys, and it was a wet, rainy night. So again, when it's raining and it's dark and everything is electric, the battery goes much faster, and like we're down under 10%, having to drive into a big, like this is it, having to drive into a big fucking city off the motorway to find, and then we're going around these roundabouts and we got to one and it wasn't working, and we're like down to fucking 5%, do you know, like, and like, you know, like that's, oh, that bugs, like that really bugs, do you know, like, yeah, there, yeah,
Well,
anyways, that's
maybe we have found a positive in all of this, right? Because it's actually quite hard in the modern world where everything is so easy and cushy, and all you need to do is pull your credit card out, and you can solve pretty much any problem, right? It's actually quite reassuring that you can get like into potentially real trouble just because your car can't find a PowerPoint for your car.
like there's
Actual
no
adventure, right? Like real
there,
adventure.
there's nothing like that rain, Janks. Like, can you imagine in a dark winter's night, we're like tired after a fucking long day? Like, you know, you could be just cruising home, but instead you're in the city looking through it up. Anyways, we got there thankfully, and we haven't had to get rescued. So, but yeah, not pleasant. Thank
Okay.
you, Eric.
Okay. No, thank you very much for coming on. That was fun. And
Yeah,
yeah, hassle your husband to come on and do one as well at some point. I'm sure Mike must have a long
will
list of
do.
things that bug him. I'm sure we all do. So yeah, let's get Mike on here to do one as well.
I will.
All right. Thanks again. And thanks everyone for watching.